are live.
Excellent.
Look at us.
I was practicing. I just happened to...
Oh, wait, just a minute. Our feed just went really squirrely. Okay, can you tell me that again? Our feed just went really squirrely for some reason, and I don't know why.
Yes, mine told me that the connection was lost for a moment.
Yeah.
So, everybody get some behavior. We're gonna do right today, okay?
That is the plan. I'm glad that it's not quite 3:30 yet and that nobody is here yet, so that nobody saw that. So you were talking and then just...
Not.
It was just like stop motion.
Freeze frame.
Right. So, oh goodness, I just got something in my eye. While we're waiting for folks to arrive, the clock is striking 3:30. So, and so people are starting to get here. We'll just get ourselves settled. Okay. That was strange. It happened again. Alicia, are you there? Well, this is odd. Hi, Shauna. I can see that you're here. We are going to talk about who you leave this 22-year-old to. I just want to get square with our feed. I'm not sure what's happening with it, but something very strange is going on. So bear with us for just one moment. I am going to shut us down and come back. I'll be right back because very strange things are happening with the feed. Okay, so it's just me for a moment. We are getting Alicia back on the feed. I have no idea why she went away, but I would very much like for her to come back. So, so I'm gonna get her, and then we'll start talking about conservatorships and guardianships. And then maybe we will also figure out how to edit video so that we can cut this part off. Oh, geez. Okay. Hey, Alicia, welcome back.
Hey, thanks.
Yeah.
There you are.
I don't know what was going on just then. So give us 1 second. We're getting set back up. Shauna is here and has questions. Look at that.
I like students that come prepared.
I love it, right? So I'm just gonna put my name
when the teacher is too.
I'm just gonna put my name by my face for folks who don't know us. And okay, it looks like we're set. And it only took 3 minutes or 2 minutes, 2 clock minutes. All right.
2 and 2.
Okay, so we are here. We're here, and I should go ahead and ask, who are you and how are you?
I am Alicia Holland. I am one half of Dahlia Law Group. And right now, today, I feel like I am sliding in under the wire. It was one of those, like, oh, I've got plenty of time, so let me do this one quick thing. And then the while I'm in here syndrome kicked in.
Mm-hmm.
And so it turned into many a things. And so I was like, uh-oh, we no longer have plenty of time. We're a little short.
Yeah.
So it's like, woo, I just got here. So settling in.
Got it.
How are you? Well, first, who are you and how are you?
I am Jill Bates Moore. I am the other half of Dahlia Law Group. And I am fine. I am having a good and dense week. So there's a lot to do, and it's all great. And running through multiple projects, and in that, it has me feeling like I'm reading from the book of random. So like 1 minute I'm on the phone, the next minute I'm going to the post office, the next minute I'm trying to figure out why the live stream won't work. But it's all good. It is all good.
Excellent.
Yeah. That's this week. Ask me again. Ask me again in about 4 hours and see if I feel the same way. But
Ditto. Ditto.
Shauna, everybody else who's here, tell us how you're doing. Tell us how you're doing. And while you're doing that, we will introduce our topic for today. Today we are going to be talking about guardianships and conservatorships. And we thought that we would approach it with a, what are these things, and why do you encounter them? But then also, of course, some practical guidance about how to approach them, right? To plan ahead of time, right? and then how to approach them when the time comes.
Yes. So
I thought your thing froze again. I was like, wait, it didn't happen again, did it?
No. So I was just going to add that one thing about this particular topic that I think it's important to cover on the front end is that the concepts that we're talking about are universal. However, this is a process that, because it can involve some court process when it needs to be used, that there are going to be some state specific things. So checking in with somebody that's in your state, we're talking about California since we are California lawyers, but checking in with someone in your state will be really helpful on these, just to make sure that those state specific points are handled as well.
Yeah, that's a really good point. We are, we practice in California. So a lot of times we are talking about state specific things. Well, frankly, all the time we're talking about state specific things. But this one, as with most things, has a broader application. Shauna says that she's good. It's been a busy work day, but that she had a meeting that ended early, which allowed her to be here with us today, and she's glad for that. And we are glad too, friend. Thank you. Thank you.
Time back.
So, like Alicia was saying, guardianships and conservatorships these are court processes, right? Conservatorship, or let me start with the guardianship, actually, because I think that's the more universal term. Guardianship is when someone needs to be put in charge of the person and or the stuff of a minor. So somebody who is younger than age 18. And that's because the law doesn't recognize folks generally under the age of 18 as being competent to make their own decisions and to handle their own affairs, no matter how grown they tell their parents they are. So a conservatorship is, that's what we call it in California. Some other states will call this a guardianship as well, but basically a conservatorship is a type of guardianship for an adult. So somebody who is age 18 or older. So like I said, in California, we call that type of guardianship a conservatorship. In other states, they might call it a guardianship, or they may call it something different. But it is the same. It is the same concept, right? That we need somebody to be a substitute you, right? To make your decisions for you. And so this involves a court process. So any type of guardianship like this is going to require you to go to court. And it is different in that way from a power of attorney, or from a durable power of attorney, and from a healthcare power of attorney, or personal care power of attorney, whatever they call it in your state, because it's different in a couple of ways. One, because you have to go to court, and with powers of attorney, you usually don't have to go to court unless something is wrong, or somebody is either doing something they're not supposed to do or not doing something they are supposed to do, right? But it's also different in the way that typically with a power of attorney, as long as the person who is granted that power is mentally able to, their voice is still respected, right? So if I grant Alicia a power of attorney to for financial purposes, then she can do whatever I've said in the power of attorney that she can do. However, she cannot override my decisions as long as I have mental capacity to still make those decisions. A guardianship or conservatorship is very different in that way. If Alicia has a conservatorship, if she has conservatorship powers or guardianship powers over me, then even though I might want something different, we still have to do what Alicia says to do. And so in that way, we are substituting her judgment, her discretion for mine. And because of the robustness of that power, she really is, as my guardian or as my conservator, she really is standing in for me, right? In the fullness of the powers that are granted to her under that guardianship or conservatorship. And because of that, that requires a different level of supervision, right? Alicia looks all nice and everything. You all might think she's a nice person. No, she really is. So
Giving you my angel face.
right. So that's why that court process is required, so that there is some supervision and some oversight. All right. So with that backdrop, Alicia, do you want to talk a little bit about when someone might need to apply for a guardianship or a conservatorship, and how do we even go about putting that in place?
Yeah, absolutely. So when thinking about when somebody is applying for guardianship and conservatorship, this is a place where, even if we are talking about the interchangeability of the terms from state to state, the instance is going to be different for when you're talking about an under 18 somebody and an over 18 somebody. So for an under 18 somebody, when you might be applying for a guardianship is likely going to be because something has happened to one of their parents where they are not in a position to take care of that child, and somebody needs to step in to be appointed a legal guardian for that child. And so it could be that maybe the parent just needs some support because of something they have going on in life. Parent is having a medical crisis, or if a parent has passed away, then that would be where we would be applying for that legal guardianship for a person that is under the age of 18. And what that is about is figuring out who is going to have the care responsibility for that child. And the more practical aspect of where you would see that process needing to be played out is if the child needs medical care, or needs to be registered for school, or something needs to be done for the child, and a form needs to be signed to say who is the legal guardian of this child, then that court process to get that court order is going to be the decision point for deciding who has the legal capacity to stand in and agree to that on behalf of that child. Mhm.
I have been talking my face off. I mean, just chatting. Just chatting. My microphone was on mute the entire time. The only person who could hear me was Alicia.
Oh, I was like, I can hear just fine. You know,
Oh my
to
goodness.
life.
Didn't I tell I said at the
Well,
beginning, just reading from the book of random. This
welcome to the
and
random life.
I muted the microphone because I didn't want because my chair is, I love this old chair, but the chair is a little squeaky, and sometimes if I'm adjusting myself, it'll make noise. And so I didn't want any ambient noises to get in the way of what Alicia was saying. See, there's the chair noise, and I just completely did not unmute the microphone. I am sorry, y'all. I'm sorry, but see,
Say it all over again.
progress. All right. I was saying that I thought that what you were explaining about the necessity of the court process and what it does was really important because it is so different than the informal things that we do to take care of family or to stand in for family in the instance of when we're talking about a guardianship of a minor. We can, if the child needs to come and live with grandmother or with auntie or something like that, I don't necessarily need a guardianship in order to act informally with my loved one. But I don't have any sort of legal jurisdiction over that child. And so being able to do things like register the child for school or, make health or medical decisions for them in a formalized way, or importantly, to be able to put them on my health insurance, right? To be able, so the things that are, some of the things that are absolutely necessary in order to care well for that person, I won't have access to without that guardianship in place. And so I was just echoing that. I thought what you were saying was a really important point.
Yes.
And except that nobody could hear what I was saying because my microphone was on mute.
It was so excellent it got said twice.
I promise you all, I am a well-functioning adult on most days. I really I really can be trusted to handle adult things. I promise. Promise. Shauna, is the sound coming through better now? She's gonna tell us, but in the meantime, I'm sorry. I'm gonna get myself together.
Appreciate you.
Yeah, I'm gonna get myself
Surely would have
together.
had an entire live stream with half a conversation.
Mute. I mean, just muted. Here, just what sound? What do we need that for?
You and your pesky details.
All right. So you were talking. You were talking also about conservatorships, and you were talking about conservatorships and the court process for those, and when you would apply for one and why.
Yes, so those were our under 18 babies. So for our folks that we love that are over 18, where we might need a conservatorship can come in a wide array of situations. So for a conservatorship over an adult person, I'll start with the entry level folks of where we might see that come up for the youngest of our adult people, which is if we have somebody that is about to be 18 or newly 18 that maybe has some mental or cognitive condition that requires them to need some support, and that care by, it might be a parent but it might not be, needs to continue for them, then we might be applying for a conservatorship for that person so that their adult that has been helping and supporting them before the clock struck midnight on birthday can continue in that role. Now, just because you think that your young person is a little squishy in the brain and they just turned 18, that does not rise to the level of the need for a conservatorship. Because like Jill was saying, we are taking that person and literally putting this adult in their shoes and taking away that the court is actually going to deem them incapable of doing and making these decisions for themselves. And in order to get that capacity back, it involves going to court and having to prove that. So it's not just because the person is young and immature. That is definitely a distinction. This would be like in California, for instance, we have a service called the Regional Center that provides support services for children that have certain diagnoses. Think autism, for instance, maybe one, or somebody that has some developmental delays or disabilities. And so those people, there's a whole separate set of conservatorship that we might use so that somebody can support them as they enter into legal adulthood. Right. So that might be one place where we may be applying for a conservatorship for an adult.
Can I just interject before you move on? Yeah, do you mind? What Alicia said about the regional center and mental health diagnoses is also a really important thing to keep in mind. That is a specific type of conservatorship. And just because someone has a mental health diagnosis doesn't mean that they automatically require a conservatorship or even qualify for one, right? So someone could be on the autism spectrum and functioning just fine. I mean, there's no reason why they can't handle their own affairs. They might need some support, but you might need some support. Like, clearly, I can't even manage a microphone mute button well on today, so I might need some support.
Yeah, this is me raising my hand for support.
Right. So I don't want to leave you with the impression that a mental health diagnosis alone is enough to meet the standard for having a conservatorship put in place over an adult.
Yeah, that is really important. Then other times where someone may need a conservatorship as an adult is if they have sustained some injury or some cognitive impairment has arisen such that they are needing support. So some of the more common instances where we see conservatorship for an adult person are going to be somebody has sustained some injury where they may have a traumatic brain injury of some kind, or that they have received a diagnosis like an Alzheimer's or dementia, things of that nature, where they're not quite being able to track things the way that they used to, and so somebody needs to be able to support them in that. And so because of what is happening, both that the deficit or the impairment needs to be there for the need for the conservatorship, and because of that heightened level of what is happening here, where the court is basically taking away this person's ability to adult for themselves, so to speak, that is why it is such a high bar, and it involves a court process. And so what is going to be happening there is there's going to be some investigation done on the court level to confirm that this person does in fact need to have support. They're going to talk to the person. The person might say, I don't need this, but they're going to look at it holistically, because some of us are feisty in nature. And even though we need the supports, like, we'll fight you down and say no.
Woo, so, ask us how we know.
Right. And so, while we appreciate your feisty spirit, sometimes we still have to get in there and provide that support.
Oh my goodness, so we had a client. Wait a minute. We had a client who was it was obvious to everybody except the parent that parent really needed a conservatorship in order to protect themselves. This person was highly susceptible to fraud attempts and undue influence. There were people trying to take their money. I mean, people were bold too. They would call this parent and say, you know, it's time to go to the bank today. And the parent would go to the bank with them and remove money from their account and give it to these people. So clearly, this parent needed to have a conservatorship in place, but the nature of parent's health condition that was causing this cognitive decline it came with some behavioral irregularities. And the minute we said conservatorship, parent was like, hold my beer. Let me show you acting out.
These earrings off.
It was a show. It was a show. I mean, and I'm laughing because it worked out okay. Everything that needed to happen did happen. But whoo, it was a ride.
Yeah. And it's interesting because often what we see is it's either something like that, where it's a lot of feisty fight, or it's somebody that the need is there and everybody is agreed about it, and the challenge is that person no longer has the cognitive ability to sign off on things like an advanced healthcare and a power of attorney. But in order to be able to step in to do things like getting access to that person's money to help pay for their care, then that is where the conservatorship is needed. Mm-hmm. Another place where we'll see a conservatorship come up is, and so we bring these things up really as if you were hearing this and be like, no, I'm good, my people are good, but this is yet another place of talking to your people is so important. Your people in your generation and your people in the generation above you, even if they don't want to and are trying to fight you, try to find a way to keep having these conversations. Because another place where we will see conservatorship needs arising, and they're really unfortunate because conservatorships are not cheap once you're in that court process, and it's not a one and done situation, it's a continuing process where the court has continuing oversight. But you have parents that were taking care of and supporting each other within their household, and one parent passes away, and the parent that is left now has some deficit and either doesn't know how to do the things and has the deficit, or was already suffering the deficit, but not enough people were keeping an eye on this couple so that they knew the level of it. Mm-hmm. And so now to support the surviving parent, kids and loved ones are having to try to step in and figure it out. And it's at that point where they figure out that surviving partner in that couple does not have capacity to sign off on these documents. And so even though we're all clear we need the support, we're all aligned on how we're going to do it, we're still in the conservatorship land because no one can sign off to give a power of attorney in that instance.
So all roads lead to the courthouse.
Yeah. And so that's where some of these other documents that we've been talking about in the series become important, because usually when we're in the land of conservatorship, it's because the opportunity for those other documents is no longer available to us. And so the conservatorship is how we step in to be able to support these people.
Right. So we have talked about the fact that both conservatorships and guardianships, they can go by different names in different places. So don't get too jammed up with the names. But for ease, we'll talk about how they're referred to in California. Both conservatorships and guardianships require court processes. Guardianships in California are for people who are younger than age 18. Conservatorships are for people who are 18 or older, but there's something going on that is more than just their age, right? It's not age dependent, except for that threshold requirement that they're age 18 or older. So there could be a mental health situation going on. It could be some cognitive decline going on. It could also be a continuation of care situation. So we had a guardianship for our child who was not high functioning in the ways that would allow them to protect themselves as an adult. And we need those powers to continue because now our child is turning 18, right? So that's an instance where we might have a conservatorship. There are also emergency mental health conservatorships that can come up. All of them require going to the courthouse. But we are not having conservatorships just because we think that our son or daughter is imprudent, because they are not exercising good judgment, because as my as my great grandmother used to say, because they are simple. Right.
I was thinking knucklehead.
Right. That is not the reason for a conservatorship. Excuse me. And we know that it is a pretty extreme action to take, because we are substituting the most of the discretion and the power of the individual who is subject to the conservatorship for our own, right? We are stripping them of very important independent powers, right? To decide where they live, to decide who their doctors are, to decide what's happening with their money, and so on and so forth. We are stripping them of those powers, and so that level of responsibility requires some oversight. We have a question before we get into what we should be thinking about when we are nominating guardians and conservators. The question is from Naomi, is asking, is this what the Free Britney news is about? Hashtag leave Britney alone. And so, Alicia, do you know about this, or do you want to talk about this a little bit?
I believe if we're talking about Britney Spears, then yes.
No, I don't think we are.
Oh.
I think we're talking about the young lady who was sent by a judge in, I don't remember what state, but she was sent to a juvenile detention center for, essentially she was jailed as a minor. And the narrative that I know, that I've heard about, is that it is because she did not do her homework while physically distancing, doing online school. Naomi, do I have the right thing, or are you talking about something else? Tell me, and we will come back and talk about it to the extent that we know about it. We try to not talk too much about things that we don't know anything about. Oh, she's talking about Britney Spears.
Oh, okay.
Never
that
mind.
I can speak to.
Never mind. Now I need to know what the baby's name is, who is jailed for not doing her homework. Now, you talk about Britney Spears since you know about that. I'm going to find out this child's name that I have completely injected into this conversation.
Yeah.
Mute buttons and Britney Spears. That should be the title of this episode.
So yes, that is what the Free Britney movement, or I'm not sure if a movement is the thing, but what that is about. So Britney Spears a few years ago was having some struggles. It was around the time that she was getting a divorce, and she was put under the power of a conservatorship. And this is exactly what we're talking about. The people that were around her said something is going on, and the decisions that she's making, we can see some cognitive impairments beyond just, this just doesn't seem like a good idea. And
this is when she shaved her head.
This is when she shaved her head. They gave custody to her children, to their father, all of those things. And Britney was put under a conservatorship, and her father was placed as her conservator. And so what that meant during that time was all legal decisions about what she could do, contracting, anything like that. When they go through that process and put her under the power of a conservatorship, they have stripped her ability to sign off on that contract. And so if you wanted Britney Spears to buy a car and sign off on the contract, instead of her signature, who you actually need is her father, not because he is her father, but because he is her conservator. So if I am the conservator of Britney Spears, then you would need my signature instead of hers, even though we don't have any familial relationship. And so now that Britney has gotten the support and help that she needs and is doing things, now they are in court because she is trying to get that conservatorship ended. And so that's what I was mentioning before, is that's why it's not just I don't agree with what you're doing, so let's run to the courthouse and let me be the person. Because in order to get the conservatorship in place, there are some things that are done where some capacity evaluations are done by professionals that are either operating in the mental health sphere, the medical sphere, or a combination of the two, that they are signing off on the assessments that they've done, and that is getting presented to the court. And so in order to get a conservatorship ended for a person, you're going to do all of that again. So you're going to have to do the evaluations. People are going to have to certify that to the court. Investigation is going to need to be done. So just because you have decided that you no longer need it, that alone is not enough to get it ended.
Right. So you can see how it is once you're in that process, you are definitely in it. The only time, we have seen guardianships end, of course, when a young person turns 18, if there's nothing else going on, right? Just about all of the conservatorships that we have handled have ended after the person who was subject to the conservatorships passed away. Frankly, and that's because most of the conservatorships that we work with, or that we have done, we've done other ones, but many of them are in relation to helping elder generations of a family who are now, because of their physical health, right, it is affecting their cognitive abilities. And I am glad that I opened my fat mouth about the young lady who was jailed. She's 15. The state is Michigan. The name that they are calling her by is Grace. I doubt that that's her real name because she's a minor. And Lisa is commenting that Grace is an illustration of the greased skids of the school to prison pipeline, and has provided a link to essence.com article that is describing that situation, and she's saying that this situation is racist. A 15-year-old black girl who is locked up by the state when other interventions would be offered to a white child or to a another non-black child is racist. And so I encourage.
Why are we even in court about missed homework?
Yeah, I encourage folks to look this up and to inform yourselves about it. And to the extent that your armchair or keyboard activism can lead you to lend your voice to this situation, do that as you feel led. I want to be mindful of time too, with all of my mute button shenanigans and whatnot. We're at about 40 minutes now, so I think this is a good time for us to talk a little bit about how you can influence the conservatorship or guardianship process, because this is a place where you have to speak to it if you don't want the state to decide for you who's going to be in charge, right? The state of California, the laws of this state have a hierarchy for who gets priority in terms of being named or appointed by a court as conservator. And it's what you would think of, right? We're starting with sort of the nuclear family and moving out from there. But you can say well ahead of time if there is somebody that you would prefer to be your conservator, to be appointed as a conservator for you, or as importantly, guardians of your children, in the event that those extreme measures were needed. And while that might land on us as well, sure, I should be able to have some say or some influence, one of the things that I am constantly surprised by is the fact that people don't always make the connection that you get to say who you don't want either, right? You get to, or also, right? And that can be even more important, right? There are sometimes people in our lives who might have priority. They might be a close relative even that don't have an expansive enough worldview, right, to be guardians of our children, to guide them through life. They might not be, I tell our clients this all the time, right? If I am thinking about someone to be in charge of my children, and I understand that they are empathetic, they are compassionate, they would be great parents, right? If I couldn't, they're going to be second rate to me, but but if I couldn't do it, they would be great. But I also know that they haven't successfully balanced their checkbook since like 1987. Then maybe they aren't the best fit to be in charge of my child's money, or my money, even though they're great to be in charge of my child's person, right? Their personal care decisions or my personal care decisions. You can break those powers up. In the state of California, you can absolutely have a different conservator or guardian in charge of the person. So where I live, who my doctors are, like what sort of social decisions might get made on my behalf. You can have somebody who's in charge of that and somebody completely different who is in charge of my stuff or my child's stuff, right? That's an important thing to keep in mind. And the law as it is written doesn't really sort of deal in that level of nuance. The powers exist, but relying on the California probate code alone is not necessarily going to get you that level of nuance. So it's important to have your own voice heard in the matter. And yes, a question we get a lot is, do courts take it seriously? And absolutely, yes, they do. They do by practice and they do by law. So what if anything else, should we, I mean, obviously, if we're going to nominate somebody to be guardian or to be conservator, we want to write that down, right? And we want to include that with our legacy and estate planning tools. But other than the names of sort of who made the cut and who does not make the cut, is there anything else, Alicia, that we might want to include in there?
Yeah, so if there are, thinking about first for the children, if there are people that are in versus out for who you want to be the person, but it's also important to you that there is some formalization of something that needs to happen on behalf of your children, then that might be a thing you want to include in that nomination. So maybe you want your kids to still have a relationship with the grandparents, but the grandparents' age or where they live is such that they might not be the best fit for the day-to-day care for the child, or you are putting, or who you are nominating is on one side or the other of the family, but you want to have it documented by way of that court order for the guardianship for visitation for family members from the opposite side, then those might be things that you would want to include in that nomination. And so thinking about the nominations for both the conservatorship and a guardianship, this is your voice testifying to the court. So we've said that these are court processes. And so this gets to be you speaking to the court in a moment where you can't physically be there to do it, to say, if this is necessary, these are the thoughts that I want you to know in how you make this decision. So the who's in, the who's out, if there are important things about who you want to make sure that there are visitation rights for your child, if there are certain things that you want included in those orders so that everybody can be clear about what you want to happen, like where you would prefer geographically for your children to live, for instance, things of that nature, then those are things you're going to include in those nominations. On the conservator side for the adults, you can have some of those same nominations, some of those same instructions in that nomination as well. And that becomes important. So thinking about something that Jill was just saying, that there's the hierarchy in the probate code structure. One of the things that you need to be thinking about in making a nomination here is that you may have people that land on the same level of that hierarchy. And so sometimes that's where the dispute actually is in the court, is who's the person. And so what that looks like is you have multiple children and they don't agree about what needs to happen. And so then the court is deciding between which of your children should be in the role. And so if you have thoughts about, one of my kids is better with this part, but one of my kids is better with that part, then this is where you get to put that in the paper. The last thing that I can say about thinking about who to put in these roles is sometimes people, especially when we're dealing with children, will say, well, isn't it just going to be their other parent? And there is a presumption of other parent, but not a guarantee. And that one definitely splits when you're dealing with the person of the child, so the day-to-day stuff of the child, and dealing with the financials for the child. So with the financials for the child, that presumption of other parent is a lot less. So we have seen it before where a parent who has legal custody of the child still in the court to get appointed as the guardian of the estate because somebody else has left money to this child. And so if there is a reason that maybe you don't think the other parent is best fit for that role, then speaking to that in that guardianship nomination becomes really important.
Right. So as we prepare to close out, I would just like to circle us back to the original, sort of the big idea here, and that is that this planning is for everybody. These tools are for everybody. I know that we've been talking a lot about the courthouse and court processes and that sort of thing, and so that conversation can make this feel like, oh, it's way over there, or it's not likely, right? It can make it feel far away or like it is not for you. I am here to tell you it is for you. If you are out, I think it was our second episode of the Legacy live stream, where we talked about nominating guardians for your children and included a tool, a nomination form for that in the show notes for that episode, and that's still up. So have a look at that. But we were talking about an emergency preparedness kit, right? Like an emergency kit if you're going out protesting or demonstrating. Excuse me, if your activism takes you to a place where you can be arrested or detained or something like that. Hello, Portland. Then making sure
Chicago,
right? That making sure that you have these emergency toolkit items put together. If you are listen, get close to the screen. Listen. Life is real. People are real, right? And we're not here to have, high level glossy conversations with examples that don't apply to real life. So if you are facing deportation, if there is a chance that could happen, if you are facing incarceration, if there is a chance that could happen, if you are on the lam because you are hiding from some child support or something like that, but you want to make sure that your kid, I'm not laughing because that's funny, I'm laughing like, life is big, right? And there's a lot in it. If there is something going on in your life, it does not mean that you can't access these tools. I would argue that there is all the more reason why you should, right? Your voice is a powerful voice, and it merits being heard in these courthouses, in these administrative hearings and that sort of thing, so that the things that are important to you are still influenced by what you have to say about them. This is about agency, and you do have some. You might not have all that you want just yet, right? But you do have some. And so that's why we are talking about this, and we're talking about it here because we started this basics series with the advanced healthcare directives and the HIPAA authorizations. So you can probably detect a theme that we're starting from here, from the person. Right, and we'll move out. We will talk about the stuff. I promise. We will talk about trusts and wills and all of that stuff. It's coming, but none of that stuff is more important than you, the people you love, and the people who love you. And so that's why we're here. And I hope that that's clear. I really do, because sometimes in this area of law in particular, we can just start nerding out on stuff, and things can just really feel conceptual and theoretical, but these are very, very practical tools and ideas that we're dealing with. Okay, I'll dismount my soapbox. Alicia, go ahead and give a benediction. The sermon is over. Go ahead and pass the collection plate and get a benediction so the people can go to brunch.
So your real-time action item, the homework, because we told you we're going to leave you with something that you can do right now, is deciding on your people and writing it down. So thinking about who you want to do this job that we've talked about and writing it down. Now, from there, we want to remind you that we are here every Wednesday at 12:30 Pacific, 3:30 Eastern Time. If you have questions, of course, you are always welcome to come back and leave them here on our YouTube channel. We check those comments and look out for those questions. You can also find us on Instagram at Dahlia Law, Dahlia, and leave us notes and comments there as well. And of course, our website is always available too, and it also includes some of this information as well. And so our website is www.dahlialawgroup.com. And as a pin, we also will be back tomorrow as well in our limited series on the crossovers of legacy and immigration, talking with Bianca at Brazen Legal. And so we will be here tomorrow at 4:30 Pacific for that special chat. So we're around, we're available, and we love chatting with you. So please come back again, and thanks for being here this week.
All right. Thanks, y'all. And thanks for your patience and your flexibility as these grannies figure out how to operate the technology, apparently including the mute button. All right.
Laughing with us about the realness of the day.
Right. We'll see some of you tomorrow. We'll see others of you next week. Thanks.